This is episode 10 of my PC flipping series. I've had actually 5 sales since the last time I posted an episode of this series, and it's probably going to take me a while to go over all of them along with everything else. And this is going to be more of a shorter episode anyway, so I'm just going to focus in on really one computer and then explain a little bit of other stuff as well alongside that. But it's going to take me a couple of episodes to go over all 5 sales and then everything else that I've also done since the last episode. So my local market recently has actually picked up quite a bit on the lower end sales, which is to be expected with Christmas coming up. But unfortunately, it still seems to be kind of non-existent on the higher end listings that I have up. I don't know if this is a pricing issue on my part, because now some of them have been up for like many months, and I might just need to go and break even on a couple of them, because I didn't really predict the slowdown that was going to happen this summer, but it did happen, and I'm not really sure why, but now my listings still aren't getting any traction. So I'm gonna have to change some things up there. But moving on to the main topic of this video, about 2 months ago, I would say, I bought a Dell Optiplex. It was a small form factor version. I think it was a 7050 SFF, if I remember correctly. And it was just a little bit over $100. Now it had a pretty big dent in the back, but I didn't really care about this because I was buying it for the internals, not the exterior. And those internals were an i7 7700, 32 gigabytes of DDR4, and a 1 terabyte SATA SSD. So I bought it, and my plan for it was to get another motherboard and just do a real quick case swap, which is what I ended up doing. I went on eBay and I bought a standard motherboard which would be compatible with the CPU, and this motherboard was also bundled with an i3-6100, which is on the same socket. Around the same time, I wanted to start getting into using Java for my shopping and selling, so I also went on there and bought an 8 gigabyte stick of RAM, which I'll explain why later. Then once everything came in, I swapped all of the internals from the Optiplex into an NZXT H510 case, and I put that with a GTX 1660, a little Thermalright air cooler, and some RGB fans. And then with the remaining components, I put the i3-6100 and the 8 gigabyte stick of RAM back into the Optiplex, which basically just downgraded it. And then I also downgraded the SSD to an old 120 gigabyte SSD I've had for a long time. And of course I recorded all that, so here's a little time lapse of it. This next bit's also going to be kind of unconventional to my normal formula, but you'll see why in a little bit. I'm going to go over the sale information for this build right now because I've already sold it and I don't have it anymore. So I listed this PC for a firm $450, and then I also offered an optional setup along with it for more money. And it actually got a ton of interest, like hundreds of clicks in the first day, tons of messages, but not many of them were actually willing to commit. It did actually sell in only a couple of days, less than a week, and it was for someone who wanted to buy it for their son for a Christmas present, without the setup though. I also offered Windows 10 or Windows 11 on it because technically 11 would be running unsupported, and he did end up picking 10 for those reasons because there's some games that don't work with it, like Valorant. I don't know why things have to be that way, but that's how they are. And I did inform him that you'd have to pay extra for continued security updates starting next year, but he was okay with that as well. And overall, it was just a very good experience, easy transaction. But anyway, the reason why I skipped straight to the sale information after the build footage is because I didn't actually really do any proper benchmarks. All I actually used to benchmark this one was Warzone. Basically, the day I built it, I just played Warzone on it real quick, got a number, and then I listed it with that because I didn't want to spend the extra time doing benchmarking. And I figured I'll just put it up now with what I have have, and then I'll add the extra ones later whenever I have more time. But this thing actually just got so much interest and it sold so fast that I didn't even feel the need to do that and get extra benchmarks. So I didn't bother because I figured it'd be a waste of time. And this also happened just before the Black Ops 6 integration for Warzone. So the FPS range here is probably not even going to be accurate anymore, but I'm not quite sure because obviously I don't have the computer anymore, so I can't test it. But here's some footage of how it ran in the old Warzone. It was averaging like 70 FPS with recording in 1080p basic, which is pretty decent. If I would have turned on upscaling, I don't actually know whether or not it would have even done much better, since Warzone is way more CPU demanding than multiplayer. I remember it would get CPU bounded around 80, so that's probably all the more you could get with this system, which is not bad, it's still above 60. But also since then I have bought Game Pass so that I can test Black Ops 6 multiplayer along with some other games. So that'll kind of be what I transition to moving forward rather than Warzone. I obviously can't do my usual benchmarking section type thing because all I have is this footage, but it shows that this older hardware, especially the older CPU, is still actually capable of doing some things in 2024, which is nice to see. At the same time as this, I also listed my first computer on java.gg, and that was the downgraded version of the Optiplex. I sold the H510 build locally. I just listed it as an office computer, and in 2 days I got $25 back and a review, which was nice. That was my goal. Since then, I've also been wanting for like probably a month now to list the rest of my computers on there as well, but I'm honestly just scared about the expensive ones getting damaged in shipping because I know they'll get dropped and thrown around a lot. And then before I end this video, since I know that this episode was way shorter than normal, really not very much content considering the gap that I've had since my last upload, I will go over a third sale. And I also just remembered this would technically make it 6 total sales since the last episode, because I'll explain why in a second. This was an older 8th generation Intel laptop, which I wasn't initially counting as one of the sales because I got it as kind of like a trade-in thing with a friend, but I guess I'll count it because it is a computer I sold, just a laptop. It was a Dell Latitude 5591, and it had an i7 8850H, which is 6 cores, 12 threads, and then 16 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabyte NVMe SSD, and if I remember correctly, GeForce MX 130 graphics, which are not very good. I definitely did not market this as a gaming laptop, but I did test a couple of games on it, and I did not record those either because it would have destroyed the performance probably. I remember I think Fortnite was getting 50 to 60 FPS at the lowest settings on performance mode, and Valorant was getting above 60. I sold it activated with Windows 11 Pro and a mouse for $150. There was one problem with it, which was that there were 2 dead pixels. They would show green when you're on a black or a really, really dark color background, but they wouldn't show up on other colors. So I did disclose that, but other than that, it was completely functional. And that's going to be it for this episode. Like I said, I know it's a lot shorter, but I once again found myself in the exact same situation as always, where I realized, oh, like 2 weeks ago I was supposed to upload and I haven't even recorded anything yet. And I feel bad about that, so I'm sorry, but I just need to put something out there. Something, no matter the length. So that's what this video kind of is. If you haven't seen my recent guide to taking pictures of your PC flips and you think that's something that would be helpful to you, then I'll put a card up on the screen somewhere here. Otherwise, I have nothing else to say. I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe, but you don't have to. So yeah, thanks for watching.